Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei saved by Irina instead of Rias part 3. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video, and also go support the Azurknight for writing that awesome fanfic. Let's start this video. Irina and Issei both walk into the woods nearby the abandoned church where Zenobia was headed when she and Irina split up this morning. With Issei's shoulder still in pain, he isn't going to be much help. But with his new power, he could do something, and Irina may need help since the fallen angels are probably boosting their defenses. Surely enough, as soon as they get closer, a bunch of guys wearing priest outfits with hats and black masks appears, and they all have holy swords with them, just basic swords of light that aren't anything compared to Irina's Excalibur mimic that she wields. She asks Issei to sit back while she takes them alone. Issei feels bad about not being able to help, but Irina is more than capable of taking these guys herself. She attacks swiftly, dodges easily, and maneuvers so perfectly that each of these guys look like children picking up swords for the first time with how much she overpowers them. Issei just cheers for her with his good arm. While Irina finishes the last one with a quick slash, she notices something unsettling. She sees that behind Issei, another enemy is sneaking behind him with a sword in hand. She tries running towards him to stop it. Issei turns and sees the priest behind him and hears him shout "Die!" while he is swinging his blade at Issei. Irina panics because she isn't close enough to stop it, but then a slicing sound is heard, and the priest begins falling over while he lets out a dying breath. Behind him, Zenobia stands holding a basic holy sword that she took from an enemy. She has a cold look in her eyes as she watches the priest die on the ground. Issei and Irina take a moment of silence because that was a close call, and Zenobia's appearance couldn't be more welcomed at the moment since she saved Issei's life. The three regroup for a moment with Irina and Issei being relieved that Zenobia is okay, but she does have a cut on her arm. Concerned about her situation, Irina asks Zenobia while checking to see if Zenobia has any wounds on her body. Those fallen angels didn't do anything too harmful, I hope. Zenobia slings her sword over her shoulder and replies coldly, "No, I retreated when I saw their numbers. I figured it'd be better if we both went after them." Well, it seems a bit disheartening that she isn't including Issei into their numbers. He does understand he isn't much help with his shoulder in its bad condition. Issei stands up straight and tries to ignore the pain in his shoulder to help these two see their mission completed. He smiles and assures them, "Hey, I don't know entirely what's up with this whole thing, but I'll stick it out to the end." His enthusiasm inspires Irina a little, but Zenobia seems uninterested and more concerned about her mission. She leads them, but beneath her fierce exterior, she is having thoughts about the inevitable slaughter. Abandoned church. In an underground area, a teenage girl with blonde hair is strapped to a cross wearing nothing but a white nightgown and has clear fear in her eyes as one of the last fallen angels stands before her, Don't seek, and he is beginning to worry about the plans. He thinks to himself, Rainer and Middle were both defeated by that motley crew, Kalwerner may yet fail, and I don't have a lot of time left. I'm not trusting that unstable priest either, I have no choice. He looks at Asia and looks uneasy as he plans to do something. Now to the entrance, the three bust through the doors of the abandoned church and immediately see someone standing across the room, and Irina recognizes him. She steps forward and declares, "We should have figured you'd ally yourself with fallen angels. You traitor." Irina has a clear disdain for this man, and Issei doesn't recognize him at all until Irina reminds Issei that this man, Fried Selzen, is the reason she and Zenobia are here in the first place. Fried simply smiles and replies, "What's so traitorous about following the words of the almighty angels? An angel is an angel, last I checked, which, oh my, does make you a traitor. Since you slew a divine and holy angel." Irina ignores his words because all she has to do is look at Issei, and it reminds her that she made the right choice. Irina raises her sword, and Zenobia does the same thing. Issei, however, feels that something is off. He looks at Zenobia and sees that her sword seems to be aimed away from Fried rather than towards him. He also notices a change that catches his eyes. He's about to say something when he hears a voice saying, "Good instincts, young man." From nowhere, and Irina didn't seem to hear the voice. Then, another sound is heard, faintly, and Issei sees shadows moving around the room. But before he can do anything else, the loud sound of screaming is heard through the church. Irina hears it too, and her face moves back and forth while Zenobia's eyes go towards a specific direction. Issei looks where she's looking, and there's a green light coming from a hidden doorway in this building. Without thinking, the guise is broken when Zenobia utters, "That damn idiot started without me." And Issei hears her and is ready to tell Irina that something is wrong with her, but when his vision goes back to the two, Zenobia already is in mid-swing with her sword aimed at Irina's neck. Issei, acting swiftly, jumps in and tackles Zenobia before her sword can connect, but Issei hits with his bad arm, causing his wound to bleed more and his bandage to turn red, but he impacts her with enough force to push her into a bench. Irina turns to see Issei knocking down her friend and asks in shock, "Issei, what have done?" But her shock is replaced with more worry at seeing Issei's wound. Her back is turned, and Fried wastes no time making his move and charges at Irina with his sword ready. He has a gun, but it looks like he wants to enjoy killing Irina. Issei sees him coming at her, but his shoulder makes it impossible for him to help her in time. Irina can't see him with her head turned towards Issei. But another miracle occurs when the real Zenobia appears from nowhere and swings her massive sword, and her powerful strike cuts Fried's chest and propels him through multiple benches and through a wall. Zenobia sighs with relief and says, "I cut that one close, but it looks like I made it." Irina and Issei are both excited to see her and are a little surprised to see her clothes are changed, as she now wears what appears to be nun attire with brown boots. Her first response, however, is to scold Irina right as they make eye contact. "You know better than to get distracted like that, Irina. You would have been killed if I hadn't moved in." Issei is relieved, but Irina is absolutely confused right now. "Zenobia. Didn't Issei tackle you just moments ago?" She asks, dumbfounded, until she looks and sees that Kalwinner's disguise is falling apart as the exorcist armor rips away and her true appearance comes out. She stands up, annoyed, and wipes away some blood from her mouth. Her anger is very apparent when she says, "I've had enough of you, stupid virgin kid." And she summons a yellow spear in her hand while Zenobia and Irina ready themselves. Irina automatically understands the base of the situation, but wonders about the screaming. They all wonder about that, but Kalwinner, the woman in front of them, is a more pressing concern at the moment. Kalwinner lets out her wings and takes flight, but Irina leaps into the air before the fallen angel gets too high and turns her sword into a ribbon and uses it like a lasso to grab Kalwinner around the leg and then slams her into the ground. "Using Zenobia's appearance to kill us, I won't go easy on you for tricking us like that," Irina states to the grounded fallen angel. She turns her weapon back into a sword, and it's clear that this fallen angel has little chance of doing any more harm by herself, and Fried isn't anywhere to be seen. Zenobia joins Irina as they look down on their foe, and Issei turns around to where the glow came from as Kalwinner screams and a flurry of feathers fly by him. Irina and Zenobia join him, but Irina has to ask her friend, "Where were you, Zenobia? If that fallen angel was pretending to be you, then they must have done something to you. They didn't hurt you, did they?" Her voice has concern in it. But Zenobia explains, "Actually, they paralyzed me, but then I woke up, I was wearing these clothes, my sword in front of me, and my wounds were completely healed." Irina's eyes glow. "Then you must have been saved by God's blessing." Then picks up her rosary and kisses it, "Amen," she says with a star in her eyes. Zenobia prays as well because she also believes it, but Issei, not so much. They approach the doorway, but then it flies open, and a bunch of rogue priests comes through it with weapons ready, and the two girls fend them off. Issei manages to slip by the fighting because Irina and Zenobia are doing a good job fighting off these grunts. Issei finds himself in some kind of ritual chamber complete with a stairwell to an altar. He looks up and sees the male fallen angel from before, and behind him is the blonde girl, someone who Issei hasn't met, and she isn't moving. Issei looks in horror at this. Donasik looks at Issei with slight irritation and states, "You know, if you had been a good boy and died when our boss struck you, then you'd have saved yourself a lot of hardship." Issei has his hand on his shoulder indicating his worsening condition to Donasik. Issei just looks at the girl and wonders what happened here. Donasik simply summons a blue spear and walks down the steps towards Issei, but he then notices a green orb in the fallen angel's free hand. "I've got what she wanted in my hand, but I don't even know what to do with it. I could just leave with it and give to my superiors as an apology, or just use it myself." Donasik monologues while Issei backs away from him. Issei has very little understanding of the situation, but he does understand that this green orb is what's so important and possibly the reason for all this insanity. He tries to come up with a plan, but he hears a voice again, "Use the power of the sacred gear." Issei waits a little longer since the mystery voice is making sense due to what he did back at the school. He waits a moment and falls down on his butt seemingly out of shock. Donasik raises his spear for an attack, but then a loud boost echoes and Issei propels himself forward using a newfound strength from his gauntlet and gains running momentum and grabs Donasik's hand, and his gear glows green for a moment. The voice appears again and shouts, "Now, put the boosted gear near your wound." And Issei does so without question, and then a light appears from his hand. Donasik looks incredibly upset by this and shouts, "You little punk. I'm done messing around with you." And he summons his wings and throws the spear at Issei. But Issei ducks out of the way in time and he moves behind a nearby pillar. "That was a close one, but I dodged it without losing anything, so that's good," he says with relief. But speaking of relief, he notices his shoulder is no longer in pain as much. He looks at his shoulder and his wound is mostly healed, it's just a bad cut now. He looks at his boosted gear and notices a silver ring around the middle finger and wonders what it is. Another spear comes towards Issei, but he immediately runs away and puts his hand to his shoulder again, and the pain gradually goes away until it completely fades. His arm now feeling better, Issei now feels like he has a chance and another boost. Echoes and he decides to go on the offensive. He sees the Donasik is in the air and it's making things tough for him and he sees the stairwell to the altar. Issei runs towards the stairs and Donasik throws more spears at him. Issei waits for a moment and dodges another spear. He then waits for the right moment until Donasik throws another spear and with a great sense of timing, Issei jumps off the stairs and then he uses Donasik's own spear against him when Issei jumps off of the spear as it shoots at the stairs and uses it as a step that he immediately jumps off of and another boost. Echoes. Issei shouts I didn't know her, but this is for that girl up there. Donasik can't do a thing while Issei punches towards him with a great boost in strength and his fist connects with the fallen angel's face and he is sent crashing into the floor below with such force that it causes the building to shake and a crater to form in the ground. Issei safely lands on the ground and sees that his opponent isn't moving at all, but he may just be stunned. Issei looks back up at the girl and runs up the stairs again, but this time to help her. He runs up to her and then it hits him just how cute she is. Issei blushes a bit and gently taps her face. Hey, it's okay now. He softly tells her. But she doesn't respond and he shakes a bit rougher. Can you hear me? I said it's okay, that douch is down for the count. He says more desperately. Irina and Zenobia enter the room since they've dealt with the grunts upstairs and they see Donasik down in his crater and Issei attempting to help the girl tied to the altar. Zenobia sees her and wonders, is that her? Irina wonders as well. The two join Issei at the altar and ask him what happened. He just replies I'll tell you when she wakes up. She was probably just like me and those assholes tried to kill her too. Irina looks at Issei sadly and tells him Issei, I don't think she's going to wake up. Issei looks at them and retorts, don't be crazy. She doesn't have a scratch on her, but I didn't check enough. I can heal her. His voice sounding desperate as he puts his glowing hand on the girl's body but nothing changes. Zenobia grabs Issei's arm and looks at his hand and states, this proves it's the witch. Her voice sounding cold as she does so. Irina and Issei wonder who she is talking about, but then Irina remembers too. Oh, you mean Asia Argento. Zenobia nods and explains to Issei, don't worry about this girl. She was a heretic that got exiled for healing a devil. These fallen angels must have removed her sacred gear and she died as a result. But a witch deserves such a fate. Issei hears Zenobia's hurtful words and walks up to her to grab her by the shirt. You wanna say that again? He asks with anger in his tone. Irina interjects by adding Issei, put her down. Asia Argento did. Shut up Irina. Unless you're about to say something nice, shut up. Issei looks at Irina with anger in his face. Zenobia gets irritated and pushes Issei back. Why are you quick to defend a heretic that you didn't even know? Issei grits his teeth when he asks, you mean you can't figure it out? Either of you? The two girls don't say anything and then Issei explains, that girl she was the one who saved Zenobia. Zenobia realizes now that Issei said it and Irina wonders about it until Issei tells them. When Zenobia came back, she said that got attacked and left to die, but she woke up healed, with new clothes, and her sword right in front of her. That witch saved you. Zenobia trembles a little, but rebukes, she allied herself with fallen angels and then let herself fall victim to their ritual. Issei just reiterates Zenobia, she showed you kindness. More than you deserved, she gave you her clothes and gave you back your sword. Zenobia just turns around and grumbles while walking away, but does manage to say, I'm going to look for Fried Selzen. Irina, don't let him do anything foolish. She then proceeds to leave the room with Issei looking angry and Irina looking upset after Issei shouted at her. Issei then tries to undo the restraints on Asia's body to get her down. Irina approaches him, but she then hears him crying a bit. He gets frustrated and punches the ground after failing to undo the restraints. Issei wipes his face with his arm and then says in a calmer tone, Irina, I'm sorry I exploded on you like that without hearing everything. I just lost it when Zenobia called this girl a witch. He stands back up and adds look how scared she was. She was the same age as us and now the thought of a girl's life ending so shortly brings tears to Issei's eyes. Irina is smitten with Issei's compassion toward someone he didn't know and then she looks at Asia's body and then notices her rosary, much like the one Irina wears every day. Even though she was exiled, Asia still retained her faith it seems. Feeling guilty for thinking of Asia as a witch, Irina helps Issei undo her bindings and even closes her eyes. Issei carries Asia's body and says, we should bury her. It's the least we could do for her. And Irina nods while she looks at Issei so lovingly carry Asia's body out of the church. Issei wraps her up with some clean cloth he finds in the church and Irina transforms her weapon into a shovel and she and Issei make a grave for the girl. Irina even finds some flowers for it and Issei makes a wooden marker for it. It takes a little while, but it comes out fine. They stand before the grave for a moment in silence, but in a moment of kindness, Irina sits in front of the grave in a prayer position and wishes for Asia to find peace wherever she has gone. Issei takes Asia's rosary for himself as a memento. After this little funeral, Irina and Issei are rejoined by Zenobia, who couldn't find Fried Selzen and thinks he escaped during the fight. Issei still has lingering anger towards her, but is grateful to Irina for helping him and saying a prayer for Asia. Zenobia leaves again and Irina with Issei to protect him. She tells him about the twilight healing, or at least what she knows about it, and that it's a great blessing for him to have it, since he can now heal people. He still wonders about the voice that was helping him during the fight with Donasik and helped him when he was suspecting the fake Zenobia. But after some more time, after they get back to Issei's home, Irina makes a proposal to Issei. Issei, I know what I'm about to ask you is a lot, but I think you should come with me and Zenobia. Issei is blown back by this. Whoa, I heard you two thinking of the idea, but just out of the blue like this. Irina is empathetic towards him but explains, you have 2 sacred gears, and if you're not careful, you could put your parents in danger if your powers go berserk. But there are people where we're from that can help you control your sacred gears. You could use them to serve God and help us. You could do so much good with them. Issei looks at his sacred gears, the boosted gear and twilight healing. One boosts his strength and the other heals people. He could use these to help others and score some girls, but then he looks at Irina's hopeful face, and his face turns red. He thinks with girls like Rias Gremory, Akeno Himejima and Kaneko at my school I could use these to impress them. But I don't want to. He's not interested in any of the girls with bigger breasts to impress, and he's not interested in the ever-cute Kaneko, and he's not even thinking of Yudo Kiba and the flock of girls which normally makes him jealous. The one girl he's interested in is the one sitting next to him. He holds Irina's hand with his boosted gear hand and doesn't even think further on it. Irina, I'll do it. I'll go with you both back to wherever. I just want to be around you. This causes Irina to blush. Sure, it's sudden, but Issei is confident in his choice and his life is about to make a huge change. Rainer, back in her Yuma disguise, is wandering the streets of Kuo and has a completely different demeanor than before. She is nervous, afraid, and sweating a little. She remembers what that voice told her. She has to make contact with Issei and lure him to the spot she was told about. The heat of the day isn't helping either, so she decides to take a seat on a nearby bench and waits for there to be no people. She pulls out her phone, takes a breath, dials Issei's number, and waits for it to be picked up. Issei, it's Yuma, I really need. Sobs, I need your help, Issei. She cries into the phone. Issei doesn't respond on the other end of the phone, as Rainer gives him a sob story about her being kidnapped by bikers and being held hostage in an abandoned building somewhere in town. It's a bad story, especially since she can name the place she's at, but Rainer is sure it'll work. On the other line, Issei simply says, I'm on my way, Yuma, before the lines go out. Rainer puts her phone away and sighs, that virgin over there. I suppose that means I should meet him there. She says as she makes her way there. In the abandoned church, Issei is cloaked in the shadows as he puts his phone away and his eyes glow red behind the darkness. Azazel and the other 3 fallen angels look at him as he gazes back at them. He begins walking forward. I don't know what she's up to, but Yuma's going to screw with me again. He says. Azazel looks at Middled, Donasik and Kaloriner as if they know about it, but they swiftly deny any knowledge of anything that Rainer is plotting. Issei emerges from the shadows, and his eyes revert to their normal color, but he is now wearing a new outfit consisting of a leather version of his Kuo uniform, with the addition of a red chain coming from his pocket, a red rim around the collar, boots in place of his normal shoes, a new sleeveless red leather vest with buckles around the shoulders under his black jacket, and he now sports 2 wings with feathers as black as night. When Issei was reborn, this was the outfit he found himself in, a choice of Azazel's. He seems to be normal, but he looks at his hands and notices the changes to his body, like how he now feels stronger and the addition of wings is perplexing to him. Issei practices moving them and then trying to fly, but is having difficulties doing so as he falls over. His new allies, under duress, are embarrassed over this, with Kaloriner stating, I can't believe this kid is calling the shots for us. And her 2 comrades nod in agreement. Azazel is still here as his volley, and they are reminded this is a punishment for their plot. Sucking up her pride, Middled walks over to Issei and begrudgingly gives him advice about flying with his new wings. But Donasik and Kaloriner are still unwilling to help their new commander, but have little choice. They approach Issei as well and want to know what his plan is. After some more trial and error with flying, mostly error, Issei is then asked a question by Donasik. So, what's the plan, new boss? You got one, right? And Issei doesn't have an answer. Issei just stands with a stupid expression on his face and just babbles, well, the plan is we'll go in and then we'll, and immediately his subordinates lose any faith they had. Volley just stands to the side and Azazel chuckles a little. Very green and on the spot, Issei takes a moment to think, but then actually begins to formulate an idea, and his stupid expressions turn to one of confidence instead. But before they do anything, Issei has to learn to use his powers first, at least in a basic form. At the location, Rainer returns to the chamber-like area where Issei is supposed to be at in a little while. This is due to the fact it is actually underground near the docks and the entrance is found in a warehouse. Though she doesn't understand why she has little choice in the matter after being threatened. After returning to the location, Rainer announces, "Hey, I did what you asked me to. I called that idiot over here, so I can go now." But no one answers her. Annoyed, she just sits on the ground and waits for anything to happen. It seems that Frida's left this place since she hasn't heard anything from his annoying voice or his perversion. Thinking on it, little about what is going on makes sense to Rainer because that voice did sound familiar but didn't give off a truly menacing presence. Moreover, Issei being the one they want makes little sense. Her train of thought is interrupted when she hears the sounds of footsteps approaching. She looks and sees what appears to be Frida approaching and sarcastically says, "Well, it's about time you came back, I was getting." And then before she can finish, a dart hits her neck and she sees a shadow approaching as her vision goes blurry and she falls over. Outside, Issei and Middlet are the only two to arrive outside the building that Rainer mentioned over the phone. The two of them stand in front of the building and Issei takes a moment to think, "Let's see, if I'm doing this right, then there should be guys hiding behind this door." He looks at Middlet to ask her, "You ready for whatever's behind here?" Middlet just shrugs and answers, "Who cares what I think, you're the boss right now." And summons her pink holy spear and readies to fight. Issei holds out his arm and concentrates for a moment and then a flicker appears in front of his hand. After a moment, a holy spear begins to form in his hand, a bright green one that has a unique head resembling a roaring dragon. Middlet is actually a little impressed with his progress. The two then burst through the doors and Issei expects this to go like an action movie with a gang of Yakuza-like guys with various weapons. However, the only things they find are an entire supply of crates inside of a musky warehouse. Middlet simply sighs when this anticlimactic entrance goes nowhere. "What now, great leader?" she casually asks with a smirk. Issei, now on the spot, keeps a calm expression and looks around the area for a bit and then answers, "There has to be another door somewhere. If there wasn't, then I mean, Rainer should be making noises or trying to come at us." Middlet shakes her head and tells Issei, "Look, kid, she's not dumb, and your idea is stupid." Issei gets a little frustrated at his ally and retorts, "Kid. You've got the body of a middle schooler, and your tits are tiny." Middlet's face turns red and she gets visibly angry, and then things go to hell when she and Issei start yelling back and forth at each other. Issei and Middlet raise their spears towards each other after it begins to escalate about Issei being a virgin and Middlet not being nearly as cute as a girl like Kuo that Issei has his eyes on, among many, specifically, Kaneko. Middlet, fed up with Issei's mockery, throws her holy spear at him, but he ducks and then the holy spear shoots into a dark area of the room and then a loud grunt is heard and blood spatters are heard. Issei then takes his holy spear and throws it by Middlet's head and another grunt is heard with more blood spatter. Middlet's eyes look around and she announces 4. With Issei following the same move, but he announces 5. And then, Kalwerner and Donasik both enter the warehouse through the roof with circular platforms collapsing as they enter, and each one makes a crushing noise as they impact the ground, the sounds of people screaming are heard. Issei looks nervous and he trembles a bit, like he's just experienced something horrible. But his teammates, on the other hand, simply group up with uncaring looks. Donasik simply looks around the room and tells his boss, "I don't know if we got all of them, but it was a good plan. I'll give you that." Well, Kalwerner simply nods slightly with an agreement since Issei's plan worked. All Head did was draw out the hiding minions with his and Middlet's arguing, while Kalwerner and Donasik were floating outside, watching them and waiting for the numbers to pop up. The higher the number, the bigger of a hole had to be cut. Middlet walks over to inspect her shot and walks by a small scene of gore and blood under the debris created by her comrades. Issei looks at the opposite end and sees a very similar sight, but slightly more gruesome as there is more gore and blood as he covers his mouth. Middlet sees a rogue priest wearing a black mask with a hole in his chest and is bleeding profusely. He and his allies were working for Rainer, but left when Azazel found out of fear for their lives, since he mentioned he wasn't a fan of insubordination. She looks at the half-dead man and snickers, "See what happens when you cross us." She mockingly tells the priest and then proceeds to kick him in the wound, causing to groan louder in pain. Issei sees this cruelty and immediately shouts, "Middlet, don't do that. He can't even move." Which causes Middlet and the other two look at him with a bit of surprise. Kalwerner is the next one to speak up when she explains to Issei, "Kid, these guys betrayed us. They were working for us and ran with their tails between their legs when things got bad. So, frankly, they deserve what they get." Donasik seems to agree with Kalwerner and Middlet kicks her victim once again, but Issei remembers Azazel's confidence in him being the leader. Issei looks at the violence around him and then puts on a fierce expression, "Nobody's torturing anything, and that's an order." He states to his teammates who all show slight respect in his tone, but it is shown with slight shock. Issei, feeling the adrenaline, then makes another order, "This guy is still breathing, so he can tell us where to go and find Rainer. So, killing him would screw us over. Middle smiles, looks down at the priest, and then tells the injured man, "You hurt our boss, so spill it, or else." She summons her spear again and points it at the man's face. Issei is not okay with torture, but interrogation is a different story. The man doesn't take much to say where the secret door is, inside a crate with a silver lock on it. After the man gives the information, Issei orders Donacy to help him get treated, which he does without protest, but not liking it. Middleton Calwerner find the crate and there is a panel inside it, with a skull on it, and a bad one at that. Opening the panel is simple, since all that's required is a holy spear as an opener, and a ladder is right below, like getting into a sewer. The smell doesn't help either, but Issei isn't bothered by it too much. Middleton Calwerner visibly hate the smell, but have to suck it up and follow Issei, since he's the boss. Down below, Issei and the two girls find themselves inside of a dungeon-like tunnel with torches and scribbles on the wall. Issei walks in the front to make sure he sees what's going on in the front at all times, since he wants to settle things as quickly as possible. Middleton Calwerner stayed behind a little further from Issei to talk about him in secret. His plan at the entrance to the warehouse worked well enough, but it feels too easy to them, like an amateur was in charge of those priests, and that they were infinitely disposable, considering the terrible position they were in. Issei doesn't consider this at all due to his stress and anticipation. A little ways into the tunnel, Issei hears crying, and he immediately starts running because he can tell that it's the sound he remembers coming from his phone call. Middleton Calwerners talking to each other seemingly distracts them, and they can't hear the crying at all. Issei runs up to what appears to be an exit tunnel, and he fumbles near the end of the pipe and nearly falls over a ledge, which is only a few feet deep. But below the ledge is an area that looks like a temple with two waterfalls of green water and a stone walkway without any railing. On the other side is another entrance, the right side is just a wall with mural of a beautiful woman with curly blonde hair, 12 black wings, and large breasts completely nude, which catches Issei's eyes as he walks over to it and gazes at it. "Man, what I'd give to actually see the real deal," he says to himself in awe. But after this distraction, Issei hears the crying once more and turns to the final side of the room and sees who he came for, Rainer, but she's in her Yuma guise and has a chain around her body, which binds her to a circular platform that she looks upon. Issei is hesitant for a moment, but he runs over to her and she looks at him. "Issei, I knew you'd come for me," she says with a hopeful smile on her face. Issei thinks his dates with her, the necklace she gave him, their kiss, and his happiness at having a girlfriend, but it hits him that it was all a huge lie again. He continues moving down the walkway until he finally reaches her. Rainers looks at Issei with loving eyes as she tells him, "I just knew you'd save me. I never doubted you." Issei trembles a bit and mutters, "Why did you take it so far?" But she looks confused until Issei looks at her and plainly states, "Azazel told me everything, Rainer. You cut the crap now." Feigning ignorance, Rainer continues the charade, "I don't know what you're saying. Issei, I'm your girlfriend. I love you." Hearing that phrase "I love you" stings Issei a lot, and he snaps, "I said cut it out. That's an order." Uma then puts on a surprised look, and then her look changes to one of more cynicism when she replies in a more straight tone, "Just because Azazel made you the leader of those scrubs, doesn't mean you can order me around." Issei had hope in his heart that at least some parts, even a tiny portion of her feelings were real. But then she just says, "I'll bet that you wished you got to second base before he told you. Of course, you were so boring and so desperate, it was easy to mess with you. Even now, I bet you're looking at me." She then stands and begins walking towards him despite being chained up, "with your little wick ready," and then puts her hands on him without him doing anything to resist as she whispers in his ear, and not realizing that I'm an illusion. Issei's eyes widen, and a blade pierces his stomach from behind by a sword, with a spiral around the blade and the hilt. Rainer just smiles as she is also pierced by the blade, and even begins laughing as she fades away, while her grin turns sadistic. Issei falls to his knees and turns his head to a man with a psychotic grin on his face, the rogue priest Fried Selzen, and he is holding the sword that pierced Issei moments ago. He holds the sword up, "You like? This baby is called Excalibur Nightmare, and well, I think you get what it does." Issei stands back up and realizes that his wound isn't actually that bad. He looks at Fried and demands to know, "Are you working with Rainer? Where is she?" And Fried whistles a bit in Issei's fortitude. Fried is about to answer when he hears more people coming and looks at Issei to say, "Well, that's all folks." And then pulls out a different sword as he disappears from sight. Issei appears frustrated and slams his hands against the ground and makes cracks with his fist. But then he hears a voice telling him what's wrong. "Issei, letting a little breakup ruin your day." And he turns around to see Rainer, the real one, being followed by Middleton Calwerner. He runs up to her and then grabs her clothes and shakes her a bit, "Stop screwing with my head." Rainer pushes him back and rebukes, "Back off, virgin. It wasn't my idea to lure to this shithole. I got dragged into this place, and then that piece of shit Fried drugged me and stuffed me somewhere. Despite her anger, Raynor is telling the truth since Middleton Calwerner confirmed that Raynor is telling it this time. Issei tries to hold back his anger and just wants to know who kidnapped her in the first place, but what Raynor tells him is shocking. She takes a breath and explains, okay, so I followed Freed down here and then he attacked me. But when I woke up, I found out Lord Azazel caught on to my plan and then you know the rest. Middleton Calwerner both lose the color in their faces when Raynor explains who the person was that arranged this event. Issei also looks even more shocked than the other two. Raynor looks at them and wonders, so what's got you both afraid? After a moment has passed, the sound of clapping is heard and Azazel emerges from seemingly out of nowhere to congratulate Issei. He is looking rather pleased and says, nicely done, kid. I thought you'd be a decent leader, but you went and killed all those rogues, made it here without too big of a scratch, and didn't get single subordinate injured. That's pretty impressive for a first time. Raynor bows to him and pleads, Lord Azazel, I did what you asked of me, right? So now am I forgiven? Issei sees that Raynor's fear is genuine, and it looks like Azazel was the mastermind of this event. Issei, full of questions, asks the Governor General Lord Azazel, what's going on here? Azazel explains this was just a setup to see if Issei's leadership skills were up to snuff, and it was a simple setup, he still did was expected, and then some. Apparently, he also got the rogue priests to work for him. Issei, a bit disgusted with the priest thing, asks, if this was just a setup, then why did you let us kill those guys? It sounds like you wasted for something stupid. Azazel shakes his head and replies, no, Issei, I never had an expectation for you to kill them, nor did I think wouldn't take out a few of them. However, I also never expected you to massacre them all. I mean, a few sure, but killing all 30 was a bit much, I'll admit. At hearing that number, Calwerner interjects by stating, Lord Azazel, we only killed about 8 or 9 of the rogue priests, and we didn't fight any more on the way here. Azazel looks a little confused and adds, but I did see a big bloody mess on my way here, did they go mad and attack each other? Issei jumps in and is a bit disgusted by Azazel's attitude towards the dead people over this petty test, but the Governor General explains to Issei, when you're a leader, you have to make decisions. Now, I'm not the violent type. I prefer non-violence, but there is a time and a place for it. When you're commanding, that time is when you choose it. Issei can now see that Azazel is far from a saint, and even though they still have a lot in common, he realizes that working for him may entail stuff that he may not be proud of. But then Azazel moves Issei to the mural of the woman with wings and looks at it, while saying he had it made specifically for this test for flair, but plans to keep it. Azazel tells Issei with a smile, Issei, of all things I've ever wanted, of all the harems I've created, this is one woman I've wanted more than any other I've ever met. But despite my efforts, my prayers, and all the pain I've endured becomes a little sad, I've never even seen a single ounce of her breasts. Issei empathizes with his commander and comforts him, sir, I had no idea. I'm so sorry about that. Azazel wipes his face a bit with a single tear falling from the memories of this woman. But then, he gets back to the topic. Because even though he has an idea of what happened to the rest, there is one thing bugging Raynor. She stays in her bow and asks, but even if that's true, Lord Azazel, why would you give them an Excalibur? Her question gets Azazel thinking almost immediately, which makes them wonder. Azazel then answers, I never gave anyone an Excalibur. If I had one, I wouldn't give it to a rogue priest who I didn't trust in the slightest. He looks at Raynor with an unusually serious look, are you sure it was an Excalibur and not a regular holy sword? To which Raynor assures him it was a genuine Excalibur. Issei also adds, yeah, and I got attacked by a guy who made a fake Yuma and stabbed me. He said it was called Excalibur Nightmare. He reveals the wound on his body. After a minute of thinking, Azazel decides he needs to talk to his allies about it, but also tells Issei, it sounds like you handled it well enough, and that's good for now. As for these 3 and the other one, they're yours to do with. The 3 other fallen angels are shocked by this, especially Raynor, who looks afraid because Azazel iterates, I do mean anything, Issei. You can have them wear sexy outfits, make them cook for you, make them strip, let you ride them, or you could even kill them. Raynor breaks out into a nervous sweat because Azazel isn't kidding, and she can't deny him. Issei sees her fear and is almost tempted to do the worst after playing him. But Issei sighs and then makes his order, I want Middleton Calwerner to leave and move into a place near my house. Same goes for Donaseek. I'm gonna need you guys close by me. As for you, Raynor. Raynor looks as if she's ready to run away for her life when Issei makes her order known, you're going to stay with me in my house. Azazel pats Issei on the shoulder and nods, giving his approval, and then states it to 3, Issei's orders are only second to mine. If he tells you to do something, it's the same as an order from me. If I hear that you aren't listening to him, then you'll be severely punished. After making this clear, Azazel leaves the area. Middleton Calwerner leave with Issei's permission, and that leaves him alone with Raynor, the woman who pretended to be his girlfriend. Issei, despite his hurt feelings, simply orders her, you'll stay with me and my folks. I'll need your help with this fallen angel stuff. Rainer won't admit it, but Issei's relatively simple condition is her greatest relief all day. Without any other words, Issei and Rainer leave the area without looking back. Somewhere else, Azazel is in an office-like room in a chair with Vali nearby, with Vali wondering, "You think it was a good idea to give that Issei guy that kind of power? He seems too green to me." Azazel just smiles and answers, "Sure he is, but that only means he's got more learning to do. Besides, he's young and got a lot of vigor." But after thinking on the Excalibur incident, Azazel knows that the church is likely to get involved and then tells Vali, "I need to me another favor. I want to whip Issei to proper fighting shape. He's going to need his power awakened soon if we're dealing with who I think we are." Vali shrugs and leaves the room with a content grin, but Azazel also tells him to give Issei a day or two while adjustments are being made. Some time ago, Issei was offered by his childhood friend, Irina to come back with her and her partner to the church in England after the incident with a group of fallen angels, where Issei defeated one of them and awakened to his sacred gear, a very rare and powerful one known as the boosted gear. After agreeing to come with his childhood friend, Issei left the following day, and his parents were uneasy to let him leave so suddenly, but they agreed to let him go, since they knew Irina and her father plus, they thought Issei's chances of giving them a grandchild suddenly shot up immensely, and this thought made them say yes. The church also arranged for Issei's transfer from schools rather quickly. Then, without even a last look, Issei traveled with his new allies to their headquarters and brought into the church as an apprentice exorcist with a sword master, the same one who trained Zenobia, Griselda Corda. At first, Issei was thrilled to have a beautiful woman training him, but quickly came to realize that she may be polite and kind, but is extremely scary to those close to her. Being a pervert, Issei made sure to bring a small collection of movies and magazines with him, but Griselda proceeded to burn them when she found out and gave him a very scary scolding. But he still stares at the female exorcists wearing the church armor. Issei's home life is good in England. Irina's parents were more than willing to let him stay in their home and are proud of him for choosing to help the church. However, others can tell he's not interested in being an exorcist out faith, but because of his feelings towards Irina. Nowadays, Issei's attire consists of a male exorcist outfit, but modified to be red to go along with his boosted gear, and wears a white set ornate clothes, under which makes him look like a young priest. But, his most precious item that he wears is the rosary he took from Asia before he buried her by the abandoned church. Because of his training, Issei's boosted gear has been slightly altered to have a set of prongs pointed forward on the back of the hand to create a green sword of holy light. He isn't a holy sword user, but after some modifications, he has merged a holy light sword with his boosted gear. His training is going very well, and he's learning quickly to be a great sword master with Griselda's tutelage, Tauji Shidu's tips, and Irina's support. Things are fine, however Issei has learned of a recent development that he doesn't like. Both Irina and Zenobia alongside another exorcist have been assigned to a new mission that is apparently very risky considering the odds of their survival. Under protest, Issei confronts the heads of the church about this. "That's insane. Why them, of all the people you have?" He argues with them in a dark room. One of those in charge states they will be well equipped for this assignment and it needs to be taken care of. Their survival isn't needed if they complete the mission. Issei, not satisfied, suggests fine, but send me with them or me instead of Irina. The lot of them talks for a moment, but then answers no, you will remain here until we're positive that you have control over your sacred gear. If you let personal feelings be your decider, then you're still far too immature for the job, Issei Haidu. Issei tries to argue, but to no avail, and he is promptly forced out the room by a pair of exorcists. A little later, Issei is thinking about what to do since Irina and Zenobia are on their way to the airport to leave for their mission at this very moment. Walking down the road of his new home, Issei is contemplating on his next move. He has no money to get a plane ticket and he has no time to convince Irina not to go since he didn't have a chance to talk with her beforehand about it. Not a moment too soon, a car pulls up to him and a window rolls down. The window reveals Irina's father and her mother sitting next to him. "Issei, hurry up and get in the car. We don't have a lot of time," he says to Issei with clear worry. Not wasting a moment, Issei climbs into the car and sees Griselda sitting in the backseat of the car with a case on her lap, a long one. Issei closes the door and Griselda informs him, "I heard what you protesting about Irina and Zenobia being chosen for this mission. I have problems with it too. So we've decided to help you." Issei nods with a smile, "That's great. So we're going to stop them from going back to Kuo." Sadly, Griselda shakes her head, "No, we can't overturn this decision. But you can do something to help them." Aoji, seemingly in his own world at the moment, muttering about how his daughter has such a caring guy in her life, snaps out of it and tells Issei, "We're going to the airport and we're going to sneak you on the plane. You're going with them, Issei." Taoji waves his hand to Griselda and further explains, "But we're not sending you without something to help." Griselda moves the case towards Issei and, curious, opens it immediately and reveals a sword in it. The sword has a brilliant blade, a green hilt, and is sheathed within an ornate white sheath with gold accents and a green jewel near the end. Issei recognizes the blade from the photo of him and Irina when they were children. Issei looks at the blade with slight awe and asks, "You're really loaning me this?" Aoji nods and answers, "That sword is yours now, Issei. How about we call it a very early wedding present and call it good?" Issei's boosted gear absorbs the blade, and then his gear goes through a slight change, as it now has gold accent similar to the sheath of the sword, and the blade emerges from the gauntlet, now fused with it, and it pierces the roof of the car. Embarrassed a little, Issei apologizes, "Sorry Mr. Shido." Aoji smiles a little and tells him, "Please, call me dad." Aoji's wife smiles at this and teases Issei, "You'd better call me mom, and also give me some grandchildren." The adults laugh a little, and Issei can't help but feel like he's scored, since Irina's parents basically just gave him their blessing, and Griselda laughs a tiny bit as well. With all that done, Issei and the others arrive at the airport, and the plane hasn't left yet. Griselda puts on a coat and mask that covers her face, and she helps sneak Issei on the plane inside the cargo hold by distracting the carriers while Issei boards the cargo hold. But that settled, Issei sits in the cargo hold of the plane and waits until it lands back in Japan, back to his home. It takes some time, but Issei was given some food from Irina's parents, so he has something to eat on the long ride home. On the plane, Issei looks at his boosted gear and the new sword fused to it and is thankful to have people helping him and promises to make sure both Irina and Zenobia return home alive. While staring at the blade, Issei hears a voice, "A fine blade you've attached to the boosted gear." Issei, a little surprised by the sudden voice, asks, "Who's there?" He turns his head a few directions, but then sees his gear glowing and wonders, "Wait, was that you?" The voice appears again, "Indeed it was. I couldn't help but compliment you for combining this sword with my power." Much to Issei's surprise, the voice explains a little of what he is. Issei listens and asks, "Hey, can you tell me something? I want to help someone very special to me, so can you?" Issei makes his request, and the being living within his sacred gear makes his answer. It takes him more time, but Issei finally lands at the airport he originally left Kuo at. He waits the hatch to open and immediately runs out and does his best to leave undetected. He looks at the airport windows and spots the two girls walking out of the plane, but Issei can't reveal himself just yet. It's only been a relatively short amount of time, but Issei feels as if he's been gone a lifetime. He checks his pocket to see if he has any money, but looks to find that he only has a few pounds in his pocket and no yen. He had food on the plane, but hardly a meal, and his stomach grumbles a little. He thinks to himself, well, better go and get one thing crossed off my list. It's still bright out, but he'd better go and say hello to his parents. He immediately goes their way and hopes that Irina and Zenobia aren't heading that way. Fortunately, they are somewhere else trying to figure out what to do next, and they have no real reason to drop in on the Haidu family home right now. Issei saying hi to his parents goes decently well, except where they asked him if he blew it already with Irina's family, and he had to explain a different reason why he's here, and he has a decent meal with them. They are rather stricken with his new outfit, but he makes up an excuse about it being part of a foreign uniform for his new school. Nothing eventful happens during Issei's return to his home, and he finds it is late, but he decides to one last thing before going to bed. He's going back to the abandoned church to visit Asia, as he grips the rosary he wears around his neck. It's raining out, so takes an umbrella and goes outside without telling his folks. The sky is dark, rain falling down, and Issei is on his way to visit the girl who he couldn't save. He thinks back on Zenobia's insensitive words and thinks, I'll never forgive what she said. That Zenobia has no heart. While caught in thought, Issei notices an orange glow coming up ahead, and he runs over to check it out because it looks strange. He gets close and spots two people, one wielding a glowing sword, and the other is Yudo Kiba from Kuo, much to Issei's surprise. He looks on the ground too, and sees a dead man on the ground dead. The dead man is wearing a priest outfit, and Issei doesn't like the look of the scene, but it's clear that Kiba is in need of help because the man holding the glowing sword doesn't look friendly. Hey, how about you take me on, asshole? He shouts, and the man holding the sword turns around, and Issei recognizes him, Fried Selson, the man who was helping the fallen angels who killed Asia. Fried smiles at seeing Issei. Well, looks like the church got a new whipping boy. What happened? Church cast you out for whacking it in a confessional or something? He mockingly asks with clear sarcasm in his voice. Kiba looks at Issei and remembers, wait, aren't you one of the guys who peeped on the girls all the time at Kuo? Issei would rather be remembered for something else, but he makes his intent clear as he summons his holy sword and his gear. I'm not here to visit. I'm here to get payback for what you and friends did to Asia. Issei, without another word, charges in with his blade and swings it downward at Fried while a loud boost. Echoes and Issei connects with the ground, and his sword makes a small crater upon impact, while Fried seemingly disappears, and Issei quickly uses his other hand and points it back, while a green glow emits from it, and Fried appears behind Issei and is blasted by a green energy ball shot from Issei's palm. Fried is blasted in the face and is visibly mad and holds his face with his free hand, and he runs away without being seen. Issei takes a deep breath and thinks on his nightmarish training with Griselda, but says thanks a lot for torturing me, lady. Guess it really did pay off for me. Dibba looks around with a look of fury on his face. Would you let him get away? He demands from Issei. Hey, I just saved your ass. A little thanks would be nice. He looks around as well and further states besides, it's not like I wanted him to get away either. I've got a score to settle with him. Dibba shakes his head. You've got a score to settle. Did you see that sword he was using? He asks. Issei, done with Kiba's attitude, is about to walk away when he realizes, wait, you know about that sword? How? He wonders to his former peer. Dibba is about to reveal what he knows when he feels someone else coming and decides that he can't stay any longer. With that done, Issei decides to not linger any longer, but then two robbed figures show up and one asks with a surprised tone, Issei, what are you doing here? Issei looks up and sees a surprised Irina and Zenobia standing a little away and see that his sword is out and the dead priest is still on the ground, and he quickly defends. Wait, he was like this when I got here, I swear. Zenobia and Irina approach and inspect the priest's corpse, while Zenobia assures him, don't worry, we don't believe you would do something like this. Irina looks a bit uneasy, however, and confirms, he came here ahead of us and already got killed. Since they already believe in his innocence, Issei explains what happened to the two, and they believe what he's saying because it lines up with what they already know. After Issei finishes, Zenobia nods and then tells him, thank you for finding this much out. But now you have to return to headquarters immediately. Issei quickly replies, not happening, Zenobia. Without even much thought, Issei rejects that suggestion. However, Zenobia rebukes, that was not a suggestion, Issei. As your senior, I'm ordering you to go back. You're not experienced enough for this mission. Irina intervenes and whispers to Zenobia, wait, this could be a gift from God. The priest sent before us was slain already, and now Issei is here like a guardian angel to help us. Zenobia looks at her partner and sternly explains, no, he's not ready for this. He's good enough to start slaying devils and monsters, but not this. We can't afford to let him get killed. She looks at Issei again and states, this isn't for negotiation, you're going back to England, and that's that. Issei points his sword at Zenobia and tells her, I'm not leaving the two of you to die here. I don't care what you say, I'm not leaving. I can help you both. Griselda even wanted me to come. Zenobia is a little surprised by that, but then submits a little. Fine, if you wish to risk your life on this mission, then you'll have only yourself to blame for your fate. Irina looks at the sword bound to Issei's sacred gear and recognizes it, but business is at hand, and Zenobia explains the situation and what they'll need to do next. From here on, this is the same as the second season, so I'll skip most of it until the change actually occurs. The exception being that Issei is with Irina and Zenobia instead of Rias. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support the Azurknight for writing that awesome fanfic. See you in the next video. Goodbye.